Good morning, children, and welcome back to the digital classroom of Vikram Juneja. And by today's video, I'm going to conclude the short story Hearts and Hands. In my previous video, I had done the text and the explanation of the short story written by O. Henry, Hearts and Hands. In today's video, we are going to deal with the theme of the story, the title justification, and the summary of the story. Children, we will also do the character sketch of the three characters of the story: Miss Fairchild, Mr. Easton, and the Marshal. To begin with, the summary of the story. The story is set on a train to Denver. An elegantly attired woman named Miss Fairchild is seated on train when two men arrive and take the seat facing her. It quickly becomes apparent that the woman knows one of the men. She speaks to this man, Mr. Easton, and then she is rather surprised to discover that he is handcuffed to the man seated beside him. As Easton greets the young woman, he slightly raised his right hand, bound at the wrist by the shining bracelet, to the left one of the companion. Evidently, the man with Easton senses Easton's embarrassment and volunteers an explanation. Easton is the marshal, and the two are headed for Leavenworth prison. "It is 7 years for counterfeiting," Easton says as the conversation continues. The woman is surprised to learn that Easton has discarded his life in Washington to become a marshal out west, but she finds the West agreeable as well. The young woman continues to chat with her acquaintance, but she continues to stare at the handcuffs. To ease her concerns, the scruffy-looking older man tells her, "Don't you worry about them, miss," said the other man. "All marshals handcuff themselves to their prisoners to keep them from getting away." Mr. Easton knows his business. As the two men stand to go to the smoker's car, the young woman bids Mr. Easton goodbye. All the while, two passengers seated nearby have listened to the conversation. One remarks on Mr. Easton's appearance, saying that he seems too young to be a marshal. The other eavesdropping passenger corrects the mistake, one that the young woman and readers have likely made as well. Mr. Easton is not the marshal, he is the counterfeiter. The theme of the story, Hearts and Hands. The main theme of the story is kindness. This story suggests the theme that people will display heart or kindness for others with no self-interest. The real marshal is kind man who spares Mr. Easton as well as Miss Fairchild some embarrassment with no ulterior motives at all. He gains nothing from doing this. He makes sure Miss Fairchild is informed that Mr. Easton is marshal, so she won't be horrified. The heart part of the title dedicated to Mr. Marshall, and the hand part is dedicated to Mr. Easton. Hearts and Hands, title justification. The hearts part of the title signifies the love or affection that lied between Mr. Easton and Miss Fairchild. Although it is not mentioned clearly in the story that Miss Fairchild liked Mr. Easton, but by her attitude towards Mr. Easton and her way of talking clearly reflects the relationship which lied. The hands part of the title refers the handcuffed hands of Mr. Easton and that of the glum-faced marshal. It is the handcuffing which contributes to the hands part of the title. Character sketch in the story Hearts and Hands. We talk about Mr. Easton to start with. In O. Henry's short story Hearts and Hands, Mr. Easton is presented as a handsome young man with a bold and frank manner. He previously used to live in Washington, but later shifted to the West for a better way of living. But in pursuit of more money, he indulged himself in some criminal activities. Now he was being taken to the Leavenworth prison for 7 years of imprisonment for counterfeiting. So it is evident that he is quite ambitious and reckless. Like Miss Fairchild, he is also unwise and at a moral corruption ground, ready to do anything to earn more money. You know, it takes money to keep steps with the rest of the crowd in Washington. This is what he said. On the other hand, we see a positive side of his character too, in the form of the frankness in his behavior. Now let's talk about the marshal. As the author presents the character in the first paragraph of the story, the unnamed marshal is a ruffled, glum-faced person, heavily built and roughly dressed. This appearance apparently makes him less likable, so it is rather easy for someone to take him as the convict handcuffed with the marshal. Introducing such a character makes O. Henry's job easy to convince the readers that he is the convict and to bring the twist at the end. Now, having read the entire story, the readers know that the second man was not really the convict, but the marshal. It is only at the very last sentence of the story that we know his real identity, when another passenger say, "Did you ever know an officer to handcuff a prisoner to his right hand?" So, drawing a character sketch of the man won't be possible if one doesn't read till the end. Now, to come to the real discussion about the marshal's character traits, the man was compassionate to Mr. Easton, the actual criminal. He saved Easton twice from embarrassment. He did not even hesitate to tell a lie to the woman and to undermine himself by posing for a prisoner. This shows his humane nature and sympathy for others, even for a criminal. As a marshal, people would normally think him to be rather harsh and strict, but the humanity he displayed to his prisoner makes him a unique and an extraordinary character. Now let's talk about Miss Fairchild. Miss Fairchild is a rich woman who has manner and style. In the train, she looks and speaks how a first-class person should. She has a full, sweet and deliberate voice that she used while conversing with Mr. Easton. This also shows that she is in love, or at least has feelings for Mr. Easton. When she glanced at them, she was disinterested at first, but as soon as she noticed it was Mr. Easton, her countenance brightened and a tender pink tinged her round cheeks. Miss Fairchild was also too blinded by her feelings that she couldn't see past them, and allowed herself to be lied to. She is also a normal human being who does not and cannot always act with a gloss of style and manner. This characteristic was showed when she began truly and simply talking about the West to the two men with shining eyes and said that money isn't everything. So students, this was with regard to the summary, the theme, the title justification and the character sketch in the story Hearts and Hands. I'm going to attach an extract with a few questions. I'll expect you to attempt these questions in your fair literature and English notebooks. Thank you. Have a nice day. God bless you all. See you soon.